Today we're going to talk about systems of linear equations dealing with word problems. For each problem, we're being asked to name the variables, tell what the equations are about, write a system of equations, solve the system using either substitution or elimination, and give the final answers in a complete sentence. This is about translating from English into math, performing the math, and then translating our answer back into English. In our example here, the dog food Pauline serves the dogs is a mixture of two different types, wet and dry. Each scoop of wet has 100 calories, 9 grams of fat. Each scoop of dry has 60 calories and 3 grams of fat. There are certain restraints that Pauline has to follow for dogs. The final bowl of food needs to have 400 calories and 24 grams of fat. Pauline wants to know how many scoops of each type to use based on the restraints. So our first step is going to be to name the variables. The variables are the two things we don't know. In this problem, as in life, there may be a lot of things we don't know, but we're focusing on the question that needs to be answered. And the question here that needs to be answered is how many scoops of dry food and how many scoops of wet food. We can name these variables X and Y, or in this case, it might be easier to name them D for dry and W for wet. Part B asks us to tell what the equations are about. We're going to read through our problem and see what these equations seem to be about. This sentence here says each scoop of wet food has 100 calories and 9 grams of fat. So that's relating our wet food to calories and fat. The next sentence says each scoop of dry food has 60 calories, 3 grams of fat. Again, we're relating our variable D to calories and fat. There are two equations being talked about here. One equation is about calories, and one equation is about fat. Please notice our last sentence here. The final bowl of food needs to have 400 calories and 24 grams of fat. That is consistent with our two statements here. In part C, we're asked to write the system of equations. I'm going to make some of this smaller so I have more room. When we're asked to write the system of equations, I'm going to look back at part B and see that our equations are about calories and fat, and I'm going to leave those labeled here. So I'm going to start with the equation about calories. What do we know about calories in relation to dry food and wet food, which are our variables here? Well, I know wet food has 100 calories. So that means however many scoops of wet food we use, it's going to have 100 calories per scoop. That's 100 times W. I know from this sentence right here that each scoop of dry food has 60 calories. That means for each scoop of dry food, we are going to multiply times 60 calories. If I add together the wet food calories plus the dry food calories, this final sentence tells me that the bowl should have a total of 400 calories. Notice that each part of this equation deals specifically with calories. 100 calories in wet food, 60 calories in dry food equals a total of 400 calories. We are consistently adding and subtracting the same units. Our second equation is going to be about fat. If you go through the sentences again, hopefully you will see that each scoop of wet food has 9 grams of fat. Each scoop of dry food has 3 grams of fat, giving us a total in our final meal of 24 grams of fat. Now that we have our system of equations, we're asked to solve the system using substitution or elimination. Please notice here that my W's, my D's, my equal signs, and my constants are lined up, which makes elimination a very easy process to choose. When I choose elimination, I see which variable it would be easiest to cancel out. In this case, I'm going to choose D because a positive 60D could be canceled with a negative 60D, and that's possible if I multiply my second equation by negative 20. Notice my top equation here hasn't changed. My second equation has been multiplied all the way through by negative 20. Negative 20 times 9, negative 20 times the 3, and negative 20 times the 24. Now these equations line up and one variable is set up to cancel. I'm going to add together the left-hand sides of the equation, and then I'm going to do the same with the right. When I add 100W minus 180W, I get negative 80W. When I add 60D with negative 60D, those cancel out and eliminate, and that's exactly what we were going for. Going to bring my equal sign straight down. When I add the 400 with a negative 480, I get negative 80. Now I have a simple linear equation. I'm going to solve by dividing the negative 80. I'm going to divide this negative 80 off the W, divide it over to the other side. I get negative 80 divided by negative 80, and my final answer, W equals 1. Now, when you get this answer, I urge you to go back and remember, wait, what does W stand for? W was my wet food. So what I'm saying with this answer is I need 1 scoop of wet food. Does this tell Pauline all the information she needs? No, we must then find how much dry food needs to be given in order to complete the recipe. So I'm going to take this W equals 1, and I'm going to come back up here to one of my original equations, and I'm going to plug that W equals 1 into my equation because I now know I need 1 scoop of wet food. Then I'm going to solve and figure out what D is. So which equation do I use? That's totally up to you. They're both valid equations. I'm going to use this one. It looks a little simpler. So 9W plus 3D equals 24. I now know that W is the value 1, so I can substitute that in. What I get here is 9 plus 3D equals 24. I'm going to subtract the 9 to the other side, and I'm going to divide by 3. My answer here, D equals 5, indicates that I will need 5 scoops of the dry food. Part E asks us to give our final answer in a complete sentence, which is now easy because we understand it both in mathematical terms and in English terms. Pauline's recipe needs to contain 1 scoop of wet food and 5 scoops of dry food to meet the needs listed. Thanks for watching. I hope this helps.